My first day in school was traumatic. I was all ready to go in the morning with my brown satchel bag and over my shoulder, and the two girls arrived to take me to school and I refused to go. So I bolted across the road into where Dad was milking the cows, and I clung onto something, and I remember being dragged down the road. Now the school was only a few hundred yards away, so I went there. I went into this building where I couldn't see out. The windows were high, and I was made sit at a desk forever. It wasn't a nice place to be. I was amongst, I can only remember maybe one or two people from my class that day. And I probably was crying, but I eventually was put into the desk where I sat for some time, and all of a sudden I could hear Dad's tractor coming. I knew the sound of it, and if I did, I bolted. Out the door, out of the wall, at 4, and up on the tractor with Dad. But that time, you weren't a pupil or treated as a pupil or as a child. You were just treated as another number, believe it or not. It was an awful place.
I would have to say that I have no extremely distasteful memory of primary school, which I couldn't quite say the same about second level. But what is very important when one is discussing education, and we're talking about the early to mid-50s, that we lived in an Ireland that was severe in every dimension. There was strong discipline in homes, strong discipline in society in general. The mantra that children should be seen and not heard was probably the all-prevailing ethic of the time. And so there was a strict discipline. There was use, to some extent, I can't remember it being extremely excessive, of a cane. But no, I must say I would not have any personal, terrible memory of the place. It was, one would certainly have to say, tolerable, maybe not supremely enjoyable, but then maybe that was part of the life as it was at the time, and that all-prevailing discipline did exist in society, so it reflected society as society was then, I think.
It was a different time. You have to understand that. We knew what we had to do, how to behave. Those times you didn't speak out of context. You spoke if someone spoke to you, an adult. You didn't do any of, as a child, there wouldn't have been a lot of conversation like that.
Fear. A terrible fear of the teachers, the priests that come to school. He looked terrible, black clothes and white thing around his neck, and he'd look at you and look through you, I suppose. Yeah, fear. Fear being my emotion.
There was a girl in our class and she got leukemia and she died. And in those times, there would be no such thing as speaking about your feelings. We just knew this girl, we played with her, and then she was very sick. She was gone out of the school, and we had to go to the mass, and we had a guard of honour, and we really didn't understand why she died, because we were 8, I'd say 7, 8 maximum. My sister and I and our friends, we were young, very young, running around the school, and there was this cloakroom area where you weren't allowed to run, obviously, in the school ground. We did run in there. We were young, we were children. My father had been in hospital. He had been unwell, and he was in Cork in the bonds, and this nun actually said, she caught us running around, and she said to us that your father will not get well because you are the way you are behaving. And I can remember walking home from school with my friend and being very, very upset about it, because I actually thought he was sick because of misbehaving as a child, running around.
I can remember the teacher calling out her name, saying, out of 10 you get 3 or 4 or 1, and the guy that got the 10 he was the best boy in the class. But those of us who maybe only got a 4 or a 5, we were left know that, so we were put down. That was the regime, that way it was. You were not, the teacher made sure that the guy who got the worst score, he was called out the dunce. And he was told that most days at school. Maybe he was dyslexic, maybe he was whatever, maybe he was deaf, he mightn't have been able to hear. There was a boy in my class with very bad hearing, but he was never seen after, yet he was sitting in the back of the class. He couldn't hear half what was going on. It's not like today. It was so different then. It's amazing how the thing worked at all. If you were bright and you were able to learn, you were fine. But if you were slow, or if you were anyway different to the norm, you were left behind. And that's the way it was.
Now you go to school, your mom will go in. If there's a problem, they'll be in immediately. And you couldn't, now you couldn't discriminate against people, which was very wrong. It was very wrong. But at that time, you could. And certain people were, and we were very aware of it, they were accused in the wrong if anything was missing, and they were just completely singled out.
It's a pity I didn't go to a school where I was encouraged to be whatever. I could have been an astronaut maybe or something. It's just if you didn't conform, you didn't exist. Because to this day I can remember people who were at school with me and unfortunately never did anything because they were never encouraged, they were always put down. So primary education in this country has a lot to learn. Have a lot to account for in those years. Now, saying that, lots of people did very well. But you don't realise that then as a young person until you go to secondary school where you meet lots more teachers. You have a different teacher for every subject. And the encouragement you get is amazing. Whereas in that old-fashioned system of primary school that I went to was a terrible place.
If I was to say one of the great things that has happened in Ireland, and is happening exponentially nowadays, is that wonderful level of attention where one goes along now to schools and sees that not only is there a teacher in the school, but there's an SNA or maybe 2 in some classrooms to give that special attention to children who have needs that can be addressed and whose life, as a result, will be changed dramatically and whose hopes for the future will be greatly enriched because of that level of attention and care and respect that maybe wasn't there then. And I wouldn't be critical of the teachers of the 40s and 50s. That was the reality of the time. But now it is so wonderful to see special units being opened in schools for children with autism, special attention being given to pupils in classrooms who may have problems of attention deficit, etc. And that's transformative for them and offers them a future that certainly did not exist 50, 60 years ago.